I thought I may have been watching Backlash last night during the AJ Styles Daniel Bryan match, thinking that may have been what WWE meant by the greatest wrestling match ever. Maybe they thought, oh, this is what we actually meant by the greatest wrestling match ever, not Edge versus Randy Orton. But no, it's still Edge versus Orton, which could very well end up being a great wrestling match. It's going to be very hard to top what we just saw on SmackDown last night. Now, the show itself was alright. This is going to be an abbreviated version of my usual SmackDown review, audio version of the show for June 12th, 2020. Just because I do got to get going soon. But I do want to talk a lot about that great Intercontinental Championship match and how it really sets the bar even higher for Edge and Orton on Sunday. Now, it's not impossible to have a great wrestling match in front of an I was going to say an empty arena, although that's not really accurate anymore with the, what they're calling the Performance Center recruits, which is fucking bullshit. Yeah, some of the people are PC recruits, but a lot of those people that we see in the crowd, they showed Shotzi Blackheart marking out during Bryan and AJ on Friday. How is she a PC recruit when she's all over NXT? She competed at TakeOver on Sunday. She's an NXT superstar, so shut the fuck up with that shit. But anyway, Edge and Orton, it's not hard for them to go out there and have a good wrestling match. I mean, not that the bar is low coming off that WrestleMania match, which I thought kind of underwhelmed in my opinion. It's almost impossible, though, as great as Bryan and AJ was, as good as Edge and Orton may be, to have the greatest wrestling match in front of absolutely no fans. Now, again, the WWE probably realizes that I'm not going to go on a huge tangent about the greatest wrestling match ever tagline, because they're clearly doing that to get people talking about the match and the show. And it worked. That's all people have been talking about for the last 3 weeks since they announced it. So I totally get where they're coming from. I don't agree with it, but I get it. My issue is that you do a match like AJ and Bryan, which they probably did on this episode of SmackDown to, one, boost ratings, which have been in the toilet since they moved to Fox, just gradually, from what I understand, moving downward each and every week for the most part. Not only to boost the rating, though, but two, to also not take away from Edge and Orton on Sunday. How embarrassing would it be for Edge and Orton to have to follow that on Sunday night? And I really wish this was safe for Backlash, but quite honestly, this match got 37 minutes, I think, last night. Somewhere around 35 to 37 minutes. They're not going to get that same amount of time on pay-per-view. I mean, I guess Edge and Orton did at WrestleMania, but that's for a 4 or 5 hour show. Or actually 3 hour show, but that was on across 2 nights. So I get it. Bryan and AJ getting 30-something minutes for an Intercontinental Championship match on pay-per-view in 2020 just ain't going to happen. So it's probably better that it happened on SmackDown instead. But anyway, I thought that was a great match. I am looking forward to Backlash tomorrow. I am looking forward to Edge and Orton. But it does speak volumes that you have such a great wrestling match between two guys like AJ and Bryan, and then you have this heavily hyped, which was not advertised as the greatest wrestling match ever. Just let the guys go out there and do their thing, and let people determine whether it's the greatest wrestling match of all time or not. But I will say AJ and Bryan just may have had one of my favorite matches since they moved to the empty arena, not empty arena, but like the PC, in the last 3 months. Not counting the cinematic matches, AJ and Bryan, and probably McIntyre and Rollins for Money in the Bank, are probably my 2 favorite matches to take place at the PC in the last 3 months. But this is my SmackDown review for Friday, June 12th, 2020. I am Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. Again, kind of an abbreviated version of my usual SmackDown review. Do got to get going soon. I thought overall it was a decent show. Of course, the highlight, as I just got done talking about, the AJ Bryan match for the vacant Intercontinental Championship in the finals of the recent Intercontinental Championship tournament, was by far, far and away the highlight of this show, the highlight of the night. Nothing else really comes close to being as must-see on the show. If there's anything must-see about WWE programming nowadays, it would be this match. I will say that much. Absolutely go out of your way to watch this match. Without commercial breaks, I'm sure it's even better. But it was a great match. The rest of the show was fine. It wasn't bad. It wasn't as good as other recent episodes of SmackDown. I mean, the show definitely drops a letter grade for that opening segment alone. Now, I wasn't as offensive, as offended by that opening segment as many other people were, between Jeff Hardy and Sheamus, him throwing urine in Sheamus' face. It was fucking gross and dumb. It's just stupid. It's just dumb. It's a fucking trash segment, really stupid. I didn't care about it. Didn't make me want to see them fight any more than I did previously on Sunday. And I am looking forward to Hardy and Sheamus at Backlash. But the whole urine thing last night was complete trash. I'm not going to sit here and rant about how bad it is. Other podcasters probably have already done that in the last 12 hours, 24 hours. I'm just going to say it was a bad segment. Just don't bother watching it. I know the fans of the West Coast didn't have to sit through it the same way that I did. After finding out this morning, I believe that the West Coast feed actually cut out that part of the segment. Now, they showed Hardy and Sheamus, but they cut out abruptly to commercial. They may have had like an elongated commercial, I'm not sure. But they literally cut to commercial right before Hardy was about to go pee in the cup behind the little curtain thing with the doctor. So it was interesting. It was definitely interesting and not in a good way. Less said about it, the better. It was just fucking dumb. And to me, why it failed to me was not just that it was dumb, but that it did nothing to make me want to see Hardy and Sheamus any more than it did before at Backlash. So that was stupid. Overall, though, I thought this was a decent show. The Nakamura-Cesaro match where they beat the New Day in non-title action, because what else is new? The champions get beat literally every fucking week. And I'm not talking about the New Day specifically, but like Sasha Banks and Bayley had their first non-title match as WWE Women's Tag Team Champions on Monday's Raw, and they lost. Andrade lost constantly as the United States champion. What's another example? McIntyre doesn't really lose, which I appreciate. Asuka got pinned in the main event of Raw this week. The Raw Women's Champion got beat. Bayley gets beat quite frequently on SmackDown and other WWE shows. So again, it's really no surprise that champs are chumps in WWE, credit to Solid Monster. And it's now more prevalent than ever. But it was a good match though. Nakamura and Cesaro, in my opinion, are far more interesting as contenders to the SmackDown Tag Team titles than the Forgotten Sons, who got themselves in some hot water, not the group on the whole, who really weren't all that interesting to begin with. So I can't sit here and say, oh, I'm so disappointed that we're not getting a New Day versus Forgotten Sons program, because personally, and I know I'm not alone in thinking this, I don't give a shit about the Forgotten Sons. Who fucking cares? I know they beat the New Day before Money in the Bank about a month ago. Wonderful. I guess it makes sense for them to get the next title shot, even though they were beat at Money in the Bank. I don't think they were pinned, but they didn't win the championships. They really have no reason to go back for those belts right now, although they were kind of building them up with the vignettes. If they had a vignette on this show that was taped before that dumb comment that Jackson Riker made on Twitter, then it was probably cut out from the show. I think they had a promo air last week, though. That's the weird thing. But maybe they didn't. I don't really remember exactly. The thing with what Jackson Riker said, and I've said this before on #AskGSM, they're not going to fire him for it, nor should they. The guy has his own opinions. It's just not a great opinion. I'll put it that way. You can go out of your way to see the tweet yourself. It's from June 1st. Had a lot of negative backlash from fellow superstars. I'm sure it wouldn't sit well with people like Ricochet and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, people who responded to Riker's dumb tweet. I'm sure it wouldn't sit well with them if they were rewarded for what Riker had to go publicly and say on his Twitter with a SmackDown Tag Team title opportunity. So thankfully that program appears to have been nixed, and they're not going in that direction, thankfully. They do appear to be setting up Nakamura and Cesaro versus the New Day for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. Now, the match was good. It wasn't great. It was enjoyable. I liked it. Again, Nakamura and Cesaro, I don't foresee them winning the tag team titles. I guess they could. I mean, Cesaro has had God knows how many tag team partners over the years between Jack Swagger, Cassius Ohno, Sheamus. He's teamed with Tyson Kidd before. Nakamura's his fifth tag team partner. I wouldn't be surprised if they knock Cesaro right back down to the tag team purgatory, which is a fine spot for him to be in. There's so much more for him to do than winning a fucking tag team title, but I digress. It was a good match, though. Maybe that'll be the kickoff show for tomorrow, the kickoff show match for tomorrow. Nakamura and Cesaro versus the New Day, but time will tell. I already spoke at length about the AJ Bryan match, which was stupendous for the Intercontinental Championship. They got a lot of time, which didn't bother me. Some matches really don't deserve to go 40 minutes, like Edge and Orton in WrestleMania, for example. That match had no business being as long as it was. And had they shaved off 10 to 15 minutes, it probably would have been that much better. AJ and Bryan, on the other hand, was a phenomenal match. No pun intended. For all the time that it was given, they made the minutes matter. They kept me interested. They picked up the pace as they went along. it was a great match. And AJ in the end becoming the new Intercontinental Champion, which I think was the right result. Bryan's been champion before. He will be champion again. Having Bryan eventually take that belt away from AJ, I'd be all for. I have no issue with that because Bryan never really got a real run 5 years ago when he had to drop it due to injury, and then he retired subsequently about a year later. AJ, though, on the other hand, has never before been Intercontinental Champion, so that alone feels fresh. Second of all, a lot like Bryan, so even if Bryan won, it still would have been cool, but a lot like Bryan, AJ is a former multi-time WWE champion. So he brings credibility to the belt right off the bat. And if they book him to be a fighting champion, and not like his U.S. title reign, which he had a decent reign, but not many blow-away matches, like he had matches with Ricochet and Humberto Carrillo and Cedric Alexander, but the matches weren't what they could and should have been, and AJ lost a lot. He got pinned a fucking ton on Raw in between defending his championship. So I'm hoping the same does not happen now that he's on SmackDown. He's being protected a bit better. I'm hopeful. Call me an idiot, but I'm hopeful. I'm cautiously optimistic that this might be a fun reign for AJ as the Intercontinental Champion. And there's a lot of contenders too. I've said this before, but Matt Riddle coming to SmackDown next week. Now, I wouldn't jump right into that program just because I want Riddle. I think Riddle beating AJ for that belt would instantly cement him as a star, but not on night one. AJ just won the championship. So down the road, absolutely. But there's AJ and Riddle. You can do AJ and Bryan again. AJ and Braun down the road when Braun's not the Universal Champion. Maybe. There's AJ and Jeff Hardy. That would be a great program. I think they had a one-on-one match a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken, in WWE. I feel like they did, but it ended in like a DQ or something. Maybe. But either way, that would be a great feud. I know they had a match or two in TNA years ago, and then again in like 2013. They have good chemistry with one another, so that would be a good feud. I'm trying to think, who else is on SmackDown? AJ and Roman at one point. If Roman comes back to SmackDown, I assume they might bring him back to Raw, just because they traded AJ over to SmackDown, so, I mean, it might make sense. I just don't want to see that personally, but whatever. AJ and Roman, if Roman's back on SmackDown, that's an option. I'm trying to think who else is on SmackDown for the guys that's a babyface. Miz and Morrison are heels. Jeff Elias, maybe. And they never got to do Elias and AJ in the tournament, so that's an option, maybe. AJ and Undertaker is really what I want to say. Now, I know that sounds weird, and they got to have fans there in order for it to work, but like a traditional one-on-one match between AJ and Taker in front of an audience at Survivor Series on the exact 30-year anniversary of Undertaker's debut in WWE. Literally, the exact 30-year anniversary is on that fucking day. Is on November, 22nd, 23rd, something like that. Is at Survivor Series that exact same day. AJ has been talking a lot about Taker since WrestleMania, so I think it would make sense if they build him up as a strong champion over the next 5 months. He defends the belt against Taker at the Survivor Series pay-per-view. He wins and retires The Undertaker. Now, if Taker's final match was at WrestleMania and the Boneyard match, honestly, I'd be okay with that because it was a great match. But if they want to wrap up this rivalry the right way by putting AJ over the Icon, have Taker lose on his way out so he doesn't lose 3 times at WrestleMania, I'm all for that. And it's for a championship that Taker's never held. That's another part of the story that they could tell. Taker's held the World Heavyweight Championship. He's held the Tag Team titles. He's held the WWE Championship, an Undisputed Championship years ago. He's won at WrestleMania. He's won the Royal Rumble, but he has never before held the Intercontinental Championship. They never talk about the Triple Crown on TV, but Undertaker, of all the greatest of all time to have never become a Triple Crown champion, John Cena, The Undertaker, and Hulk Hogan, surprisingly enough, are not among that elusive club, because none of them have held the Intercontinental Championship. Now, it could still happen for Cena, possibly. It's never happened for Hogan, and it never will, hopefully, unless he wins the title in a fucking Saudi Arabia show from AJ in like November or December. But other than that, Taker, and not that he's going to win, or should he. I mean, AJ, if he's going to retire Taker, he has to win. AJ has got to be Taker. Send him packing. I think that would be amazing. That's the story that I would tell after AJ holds the belt for a while, and then maybe Matt Riddle beats him for it in December or January or even at WrestleMania. So that's my opinion, but that's really what I would like to see, and have it wrap up at Survivor Series, in my opinion, is the perfect story to be told there. We had Sasha Banks and Bayley celebrating their WWE Women's Tag Team title victory from last week. Despite the fact we just saw them on Raw with the championships, I guess they're forgetting that even happened. But so they celebrated their title win. It was short-lived before it was interrupted by Alexa Bliss, Nikki Cross, the Iconics on the Titantron. Bliss and Cross came out, laid out Banks and Bayley. The Iconics merely popped up on the Titantron, if you can even still call it that right now. It's like just a giant projector on the top of the stage. It's really what it is. It's not really a Titantron. But anyway, though, I thought this was nice. I like this. I don't really give two shits currently about the women's tag team title picture. Banks and Bayley winning the belts was the right move. It's going to take a lot more than just that, though, to get me to fully invest in that women's tag team title division, just because they've spent so long kind of conditioning people to not care, with people like the Iconics as champions, the Kabuki Warriors never really defending it. Bliss and Cross not really doing much of note with the championships. They defended it a few times, but never really were they ever positioned as interesting tag team champions. So, at any rate, I thought Banks and Bayley played their roles well here. Bayley is really coming into her own as a heel. I will say that. She was booked pretty poorly as a heel early on. It just didn't fit her. But it seems like she's at a point now where she either just doesn't care, or just finds she's found what works for her, or both. But either way, I thought this was a good segment. Didn't really make me care about the upcoming triple threat match for the tag titles on Sunday, mind you, but I thought it was still a good segment for what it was. And then in the main event, we saw Braun Strowman team up with Heavy Machinery, and the returning Tucker, by the way, who's finally back from having the shits, as we were told. He hasn't been on TV for like 2 months. It's been a long time since we last saw Tucker on SmackDown, at least since April, I would have to imagine. But anyway, it was Braun, Tucker, and Otis beating the trio of Dolph Ziggler, The Miz, and John Morrison. Now, from an in-ring standpoint, it was a fine, perfectly entertaining main event. The issue is that it did absolutely nothing to establish Miz and Morrison as threats to that championship come Sunday. I mean, the stuff they did last week alone was dumb, and did absolutely nothing to make anyone think they have a shot in hell of becoming Universal Champion this Sunday at Backlash. And then they get beat a week later? Come on. I mean, I know Ziggler got pinned, and who cares about Ziggler? But still, I think that's just... I know people don't care about the match as it is, but why not try to make them care? Having Braun win again, it's a catch-22, because I don't want to say, oh, Braun should be losing like all the other champions right now, but you could have had Tucker get pinned by at least the fucking Miz or something, you know? That would at least made sense, but Strowman, Otis, and Tucker went over. They did do something with Corbin and Otis in the middle of it. Corbin was like teasing going after Mandy Rose backstage, so they're clearly setting up, as they figured, would be the case last week, an Otis versus Corbin feud, which makes sense. I will say, the trio of Ziggler, Miz, and Morrison would have been an awesome heel faction like a decade ago. Maybe not in 2020, but a decade ago, that's all they would have ever wanted. Ziggler and Miz, Miz and Morrison, Ziggler and Miz. That sounds awesome, but we never did end up getting it. I guess we can get it now, but I feel like Ziggler's always in factions, and I'm at the point now with Ziggler where I just don't care about the guy. But this was fine. So overall, a decent show. Had some good, had some bad, had some ugly with that Sheamus Hardy opening segment. But I thought the match between AJ and Bryan alone made this show worth watching. So check it out. Again, the match, not the show itself. The show was fine, but the Bryan AJ match is really worth your time. I cannot state that enough. So thank you guys, as always, for checking out my SmackDown audio review right here on the channel. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share a video, and subscribe to the channel for more content, more daily content, that is. Tomorrow should be my review of Chapter 4 of Undertaker, The Last Ride, as seen on the WWE Network. That goes up first thing tomorrow. The video should be up soon after, so keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, guys, have a great rest of your weekend, that is. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.